The road to marriage equality in California has been a long journey. Although the state allowed same-sex marriage in 2008, it was banned at the ballot box when voters passed Proposition 8 to amend the state's constitution to restrict marriage to one man and one woman. By looking at our past ongoing coverage, we retrace the legal milestones of defeating Proposition 8 in federal court on this special edition of Outlook Video.
Proposition 8, the state referendum that overturned same-sex marriage in California, was challenged in a federal trial last month. Plaintiffs in the case claim that limiting marriage to a man and a woman violates the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution.
Marriage Equality USA was outside of the United States District Court in an early morning vigil to share the spirit of courage, hope, and strength before the federal court proceedings. Raymond Donald Hong was there and will bring us his report later in the program.
450 Golden Gate Avenue behind me is where the historic United States District Court trial challenging Proposition 8 is taking place. And Marriage Equality USA is hosting an early morning vigil to support the federal Constitution's promise of equal protection for all. People are gathered to hear from elected officials, faith and community leaders, and legal advocates, as well as same-sex couples who had the opportunity to marry and those who didn't. Marriage equality activists gathered on Monday, 6:30 a.m. outside the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California before the start of Perry v. Schwarzenegger, the case challenging Proposition 8 that overturned gay marriage. Supporters say that not allowing same-sex marriage is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. Activists held signs reminding everyone that the historic significance of this case parallels that of earlier landmark cases that overturned racial segregation in schools and anti-miscegenation laws.
Over the past months, I've gotten to know these plaintiffs. Now is the time for the world to get to know Chris and Sandra and Paul and Jeff. Their stories are our stories. Their stories are the American stories. It's a story of love over hate, of compassion over condemnation, and a story of the strength and importance of family. And I cannot wait for America to meet these plaintiffs. Because now their stories must take their own place. They must take their own place in history next to Brown versus the Board of Education and Loving versus Virginia, and confirm what our great Constitution already tells us is true, and that is separate is not equal, and that all men, gay and straight, black and brown and white, are created equally.
We wanted to have a community moment today on the day that the court case opens to remind people, to put it into context of what's really at stake. Constitutional principles, but also families. People who got married can share their joy. People who can't get married can share their frustration and their hope for the future.
Today is an incredibly important day because today we're actually going to have all the scare tactics that our opponents have thrown out over the airwaves for years. They're going to be put to the test of evidence, they're put to the test of proof.
So we really wanted an opportunity, really less even about the media and more about really honestly getting our community grounded as this historic case opens, because this is a very important case and this is a historic day.
Well, the legal team in this case comes from across the political spectrum, and that's what's so important. We have people standing up together, conservative and liberal, saying that guaranteeing individual liberties under the Constitution is a value we all share. It's an important statement both to the public and to the judge in this case.
The two of the top constitutional litigators, one very conservative Republican, one a moderate Democrat in Ted Olson and David Boies, demonstrates to the world and to the courts that this is not a Republican Democratic issue, conservative liberal. This is basic constitutional law. The fact that they've come together to say to the court that what's at stake here is the very fabric of our democracy, our Constitution, and the protections of all minorities. So they've come together to say you can't allow in our constitutional democracy the majority to keep a right for itself and deny it to one minority group. So I think it's incredibly powerful that they've come together on this case.
The stakes are tremendously high. I mean, no one can argue about that. I think that's in part why we wanted to have a morning vigil to really get grounded, to prepare us for what's ahead, because we don't know how long that journey will be.
Well, this definitely will go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and whether the U.S. Supreme Court takes it is something we'll see in a couple of years.
And the risks are high. That's in part why there was some controversy about whether this case should be filed and whether it was time and ready.
This is very similar. The legal issue is almost identical to an issue that was decided on the Amendment 2 case from Colorado, where the court in Justice Kennedy wrote a 6-3 decision striking Colorado's Amendment 2, saying you can't create a separate status for gay people just because you don't like them. That was about employment protections. This is the exact same case. It's a different subject matter, but the same case. So we believe the U.S. Supreme Court would say that Prop 8 does violate the U.S. Constitution.
Later in the vigil, two supporters of Proposition 8 who are college students, one of them a journalism student, traveled from Sacramento to counter-protest. Gay marriage activists quickly blocked their large banner with signs.
I am from Sacramento. We came from American River College, a group of students, to support Proposition 8, to support traditional marriage between man and a woman. They're just interested, homosexual community, to brainwash children, to the degree to get more people. They understand that they are minority statistically. That's why they naturally, biologically, they cannot produce children, so they're looking for our children.
They're trying to undermine our Constitution. I think it's outrageous, actually. That's why I'm here to uphold our Constitution, uphold really the rights of voters. We have a right to vote. We have a right to have our vote counted. And those here apparently are trying to take away my right to vote, my right to have it counted, my right to be heard.
I think that's just absolutely ridiculous, and clearly they didn't even listen to what happened this morning at the rally, where we had people from every different ethnicity, every different age group, every different sexual orientation stand up in support of equality under the law. This is about fairness and equality for all people. This happens to be an issue right now. Gay and lesbian rights is one of the many chapters that have been written into our history as we expand civil rights, but we are just one small chapter in the large issue of extending full civil equal rights to everyone.
The court proceedings that start today is expected to continue for 2 weeks. At San Francisco Civic Center, this is Raymond Donald Hong for Outlook Video.
Thanks for joining us for the September 2010 edition of Outlook Video, your nationally recognized award-winning show for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender communities. I'm Roberta Gonzalez-Gregg.
And I'm Brianna Gilbert. We're producing this show on the day after Proposition 8 was declared unconstitutional and overturned. In the early afternoon of Wednesday, August 4th, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California in San Francisco released Judge Vaughn Walker's ruling striking down as unconstitutional California's Proposition 8, which prohibited same-sex marriage. David Boies, one of the two lead attorneys on the winning side, said during an interview for the Rachel Maddow show, "It's a human rights, it's a civil rights issue. This was a great victory for gays and lesbians and the children that they raise. It was also a great victory for all Americans, for anybody who's ever been discriminated against because they are of a different color, or a different sex, or a different creed. Indeed, all Americans who have an interest in equality." Outlook video cameras were in different cities covering the reaction to the federal court ruling, and Raymond Donald Hong will bring us more details later this half hour.
On August 4, federal court Judge Vaughn Walker struck down Proposition 8, the voter-approved amendment to the California Constitution that banned gay marriage. Knowing that the case will be appealed to the Ninth Circuit Appellate Court, plaintiffs gave a muted reaction to Judge Walker's ruling, while activists in cities throughout California celebrated by rallying and marching in the streets.
Today, the federal court gave hope to millions of Americans across this country who face the sting of official discrimination. Today, our system of justice has said to the nation, all Americans are entitled to the same freedoms. All Americans are worthy of the full weight and protection of our laws, and all Americans are accorded equal rights under the Constitution.
This decision says that we are Americans too. We too should be treated equally. Our family is just as loving, just as real, and just as valid as everyone else's.
Tomorrow, I will wake up and have a normal day. We'll do things around the house
check in on kids, go to work, just like I do every other day. But tomorrow will feel different because tomorrow I will have a sense of security that I haven't been able to experience in the past.
Equality is something that our nation has always been about. We read about it in school. Our ancestors came to this country in search of it. Well, this decision today brings Paul and I, and so many others like us, closer to that equality too.
My name is Carly Rudiger, and I'm 13 years old. For all those kids like me who grew up in a gay household, today is a great day. Always be proud to be yourself. Love is love, no matter what. And as my shirt says, gay, fine by me.
What Judge Walker's ruling does is it doesn't just strike down Prop 8, but it really eviscerates every argument put forward by the other side. The other side put forward really an empty case. No credible evidence, no believable evidence, very, very weak, very, very thin. And Walker noted that in finding that the other side had good lawyers, they had the best opportunity to show why Prop 8 is constitutional, and they wholly and utterly failed to do that. It's a complete vindication, it's a complete tour de force victory.
Proposition 8 fails to advance any rational basis in singling out gay men and lesbians for denial of a marriage license. Indeed, the evidence shows Proposition 8 does nothing more than enshrine in the California Constitution the notion that opposite-sex couples are superior to same-sex couples.
You know, the other side already had their opportunity to put on their best case before Judge Walker. And I think that objectively we have seen that their best case actually isn't very good. And it's not a surprise, because what could be the best case for discrimination? Well, there really isn't one except for prejudice. And what Judge Walker said loud and clear in his decision is that prejudice is not a reason for making law.
Because California has no interest in discriminating against gay men and lesbians, and because Proposition 8 prevents California from fulfilling its constitutional obligation to provide marriages on an equal basis, the court concludes that Proposition 8 is unconstitutional.
The pieces that I have read are just so heartwarming, and they spell out exactly what happened in Proposition 8, which is that a misleading, homophobic campaign, fear-based campaign, was the only thing that was put forward in support of this amendment that literally wrote an exception to the Equal Protection Clause into the state constitution. And that kind of fear and that kind of prejudice is not acceptable.
It helps to erase a lot of pain that I suffered from being disrespected just because I was gay when I grew up. And I moved to California 12 years ago, and it was much better. Then when Prop 8 passed in November 2008, to be honest, I was a basket case that day because it brought back all of this pain of the disapproval and discrimination against gay people.
Let's be hopeful that people can get married and love one another, and there will not be a separate class. So the discrimination ends with this generation, it ends with all of us here in this room right now.
After the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal placed a hold on any gay marriages from taking place, the appellate court will hear the case on December 6. In San Francisco, this is Raymond Donald Hong for Outlook Video.